This story takes a crazy turn, so make sure you don't miss the update. I, female 17, and my mother, female 43, moved to another state when I was 14. My mother had a nasty divorce which caused both my mother and I to need a change of scenery for both of our mental states. For background information, my mother and I both have been diagnosed with very bad depression. I was diagnosed with very bad anxiety. We moved states away from my family and friends without much notice, and she thought it was what was best for us. From the second we moved down, she had gone on many dates with many guys. I had no issue with this, but I did set some boundaries with her about this. For example, she was not allowed to bring guys around our house with me home, or she was to at least let me know so I could leave for the set amount of time they would be there. One of the guys she dated ended up stealing her car one night when she stayed at a hotel with him. Not the ex I am talking about, but thought it was an important detail. After a while, she started talking to this guy on Facebook. We'll call him Dan. Dan is a 36 male who had a heavy drinking and hardcore drug problem. Well, Dan convinced my mom to go see him 3 towns over. We did not have a car, but we were renting a U-Haul truck for the week. We were moving into a new apartment. She agreed after a day of talking to this guy. I had no problem, but I just asked if she'd be home before I went to bed. We were in a new place and still in a new town. I didn't feel safe in a new place at night without someone with me. She agreed and left. I texted her a few times and she didn't respond. After 3 hours of panicking and waiting for a text, I got a text from her saying she was going to bring Dan with her home to stay a night or two. I was very mad and more upset that she wouldn't listen to how I was not comfortable with some guy coming and staying at our new apartment. Well, he came back with her anyways, and I ended up staying in my room and not leaving unless I had to. I found out quickly that Dan had a heavy drinking problem. Dan stayed at our apartment for weeks. I ended up learning to get comfortable with him and we talked a lot. He was cool, well, when he was sober. When he drinks, he used to drink straight vodka, and a lot of it too. When he would drink, he would get crazy. He would lay on the floor, crawl around, scream, and yell random things. At first, I thought it was funny. Mom and Dan fought a lot. Me and my friend used to say they just butt heads because they had a lot in common. Once they started fighting a lot, me and Mom started fighting a lot too. She would yell at me for anything and everything. Example, one night me and Dan went out to dinner and I was talking about school when he cut me off, but I kept talking and she yelled at me because I was being disrespectful towards him. That's always how it was. He did no wrong, but I was always in the wrong. For about 8 months this went on. They would fight. Some nights it even got physical. He would leave for about 3 days or so, and he would be right back. As you can imagine, this really drained me mentally. Dan overdosed in our neighbor's apartment because he was convinced my mom was sleeping with someone else when she had to go to work, and my mom had to narc in him. We ended up moving into the next town over and got a new apartment. Well, this pattern continued for a few more months. It got more and more physical each time. He used to say the nastiest stuff to me. He commented a lot on my weight and anything I was into. But my mom would still let him come back each time. He even went to rehab 3 times while they were together and even jail for a little bit. Mom bailed him out. Nothing stopped him. Well, finally my mom kicked him out for good. It was Christmas Eve and we went to my grandmother's house for dinner. We got home at about 11 at night and we pulled our car into the parking spot and Dan opened our front door from inside the house. We were shocked. He didn't have a key to the place and all of the doors were locked. My mom's work friend, who was staying at our apartment with us at the time, called the cops. Now, this wasn't the first time the cops had been called, so they had sent 6 cop cars. Our house was considered a domestic violence residence. He went through all of our trash bags and had dumped them everywhere. He yelled at my mom and told her he had found a condom. He always thought my mom was sleeping around with anyone, and I mean anyone. It wasn't a condom. He had found the bag the hospital had gave me the week before, in case I got sick in the car on the way home. They arrested him and he was in jail for a while. We found out he kicked in our front door and broke part of the frame of it. My mom continued to talk to him in jail and even sent him so much money while he was there. I could go into more details about everything this piece of poop has done to me and my mother, but it would be the longest post ever. Well, after everything, he got out of jail and my mom let him move back in with us again. Everything was good at first. He got a job and he had to do drug tests, so we knew he wasn't on anything, but again he went back on it. My mom kicked him out again, but every night he would basically pound on our door and windows and shout until we let him out. But this time we didn't. We tried calling the cops, but they didn't do anything to help us. Well, then the worst night came. He was kicking at our door, trying to break it in. He even broke into my mom's new car and fricked with a lot of stuff that was in it. Well, more happened, but long story short, we ended up calling the domestic violence hotline. They have been a lot of help the past 2 months. Well, sorta. They basically ended up moving us somewhere else until we could get into a new place. Well, it hasn't been easy at all. So we've been living in different hotels every week, on IDC as long as we're away from Dan. Well, one night my mom gets a call and it's Dan at the mental hospital a few towns over. He told us he had laid down on the train tracks and ended up calling 911. Do you want to know why he did it? Because he didn't know how else to get my mom's attention. She kept talking to him and they are still. I basically told her one night that if she gets back with him, I will be moving back to my hometown with the rest of my family and never have anything to do with her ever again. I told my grandmother and cousin about this, and they both think I'm the idiot and should understand how much they love each other, and I should support their decision to be together. I told them I will not be supportive over the relationship that has basically destroyed mine and my mother's life and relationships, especially with each other and my family. There's so much more I could say about him and what he's done in detail, but from am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Oh my God, this is awful. You're not an idiot at all. Leave your mother and do what's best for you. At this point, it's obvious she's choosing a POS man over you. She's willing to put her own child in harm's way for him. This is not a safe environment for you. Get yourself out as soon as possible. Do not listen to your grandma and cousins who are basically talking out of their ass. I wish you the absolute best and I hope you stay safe. Comment 2. Not the idiot. My mom had Dan when I was a kid. The day he died felt like a holiday, and there was Bobby. Also celebrated the day he died. So I know where you're coming from. Nothing will change, and I'm sorry to tell you that. You're not the idiot in any way. Get out of there as quick as you can and never look back. You sound like you have a good head on your shoulders. You're going to be okay. Comment 3. Not the idiot kid. Your grandma and cousin are enablers. Get out of there legally as soon as you can. Have you tried calling CPS? Then the original poster responded with, not the idiot kid. Your grandma and cousin are enablers. Get out of there legally as soon as you can. Have you tried calling CPS? Then another commenter responded with, have you tried asking any relatives that don't support your mother's toxic relationship if you could stay? Then the original poster responded with, unfortunately, my only family is in another state. My family here has basically cut off ties with me and my mother because of Dan. My only person here is my uncle, but his wife doesn't like me very much. Long story involving Dan. Now, for the update. And if you're enjoying the video, hit that like button. Hi guys, it's been a while and I thought it was time for an update. I went out of state to visit some family. Last year I was up here, a lot had happened. My relationship almost completely fell apart and my mother had caused some drama because of Dan. The other day my mother called me crying. She told me Dan had been hit by a car. He broke his leg and his shoulders. He can't use crutches because of his shoulders, so he's going to be in a wheelchair for a few months. My mother also showed me photos of his blood on the road from getting hit. I felt nothing. I didn't feel bad at all. I believe I'm allowed to feel that way from all he's done to me and my mother. I obviously tried to be there for her, but I was so empty feeling. The other night she calls me again and updates me on stuff. I noticed she was outside and asked where she was. She told me she was waiting for our roommate to get off work to give her a ride home. Now that's not uncommon, so of course I believe her. I don't think she has any reason to lie to me. Well, I found out she was in Dan's hometown in the hospital. I found out because we have each other's location on Snapchat and I was sending a snap and it said, Dan town name. I was kind of upset that would lie to me, but I know she did because I would have got mad about her seeing Dan. She basically told me that she has this need to protect him, and if it was up to her, she'd forgive him for everything and move to my hometown. I told her that they can do that, but I will not be living with them, especially because my mom and dad do not get along, and if my dad ever saw Dan, I know my dad would talk a lot of poop to me about it. When she told me she had that need to protect him, I got kinda upset. What about her protecting me from him? I know that makes me sound like an idiot, but he treated me like poop. He always tells my mom how much he misses me, and her obviously. But when she said that to me, I straight up said, I don't care. I don't care about him. He dug this hole, he ruined his life, and he walked away from us. Frick him. I wish he would have died from that car. It would hurt my mom for a while, but in the long run, she'd be okay. He just needs to go and get out of our lives forever. I already have my plan for the day I turn 18. I'm going to live with my girlfriend. Her family treats me so well. When I went to see her, she lives a few states away. My mom basically told me not to come home because I was mad that Dan was around again. My girlfriend's mom and grandma offered me a place to live. They treat me like a person. I honestly don't know what I would do without her and her family. Comment 1. Your mom is a mess. She's codependent with Dan. She has failed to protect herself and her family many times that even the police are done with this poop. Staying away from your mom and anyone who supports her relationship with Dan is the best thing to do for your mental health. Comment 2. Honestly, I can see why you're hurt and frustrated. You've been through a lot. But sometimes people, like your mom, get trapped in cycles they don't know how to break free from. I'm not saying it's right or excusing her choices, but maybe she's just as lost and scared as you feel. It's hard to see someone we love make the same mistakes over and over. Everyone here is saying to cut ties, and yes, you should protect yourself first. But maybe, just maybe, your mom needs help too, and not just from a partner, but professional help to understand why she keeps making these decisions. It doesn't mean you have to support her relationship, but maybe offer her resources to help her see the pattern. Sometimes it's easier to see someone else's mistakes than our own. Stay strong and focus on your own path, but remember everyone's journey to understanding and healing is different. Comment 3. Your feelings are valid given everything you've been through. Relationships can be super complex, and sometimes people are drawn to ones that aren't the healthiest for reasons that can be hard for others to understand. It's clear that your mom has her own issues she's dealing with, but that doesn't excuse the environment she's put you in. You've got to prioritize your own well-being. It sounds like you have a solid plan for when you turn 18, and I hope things get better for you. Remember, you have to take care of yourself first. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for punishing my son how I want, even though others may think it's extreme? I'm a single dad with an 11-year-old son. My beloved wife passed away when my boy was only 3 years old, so he's grown up without a maternal figure. In addition, my parents live in a city 100 miles away, so I don't have much of a support network. My son has behavior issues at home, but he's usually well behaved at school with only a few incidents. I've tried using timeouts, taking away his favorite toys and other punishments, but it feels like nothing works. He is still disobedient, always pushing the boundaries. Actually, I feel that his behavior is getting worse. He's been seeing a therapist since he was 6, which I think is a good thing given his behavioral issues and the loss of his mother. The therapist says he's a gifted kid, and gifted kids can be particularly challenging. Last summer, I sent him to visit his maternal grandparents, and they criticized my parenting style. Actually, they want to be even harder. They even threatened to spank him, but I told them they wouldn't lay a finger on my boy without facing the cops. This summer's been a nightmare. He likes hanging out with the neighbors, but he's already thrown punches at a couple of kids. Sunday, one of the neighborhood dads showed up at my doorstep, showing me a pic of his kid's bruised face. He told me that next time he will press charges against my son. The first time that he punched a kid, I prohibited my son from playing video games and playing outside for 3 days. Now I've told him that would be 7 days. However, at midnight on Sunday, I changed my mind and I decided that he isn't going to that summer camp he's been eagerly waiting for months. He was so hyped about it, always talking about the camp, but I need to work hard. He cried and yelled at me, calling me a liar, because Sunday I only mentioned him not being allowed to play outside and play video games. He even called his maternal grandparents, my parents, and his therapist to tell them that I'm a liar and more. He is avoiding me. He looks at me as a monster. His grandparents from both sides and his therapist are telling me to let him go to the camping trip, claiming that I changed my decision from yesterday and it can send a bad message to my boy, confusing him about trust in adults, and that this change is a real TA attitude. Today, my parents are in town and wanted to take my son out for a walk. I told them they can come to our house, but my son won't be able to go out for a walk as he's still not allowed to play outside. My parents are saying that I keep increasing the punishment. I don't agree with this interpretation, and they think I'm being a complete jerk. But I believe I'm disciplining my son in a way that will teach him to behave. They keep saying that I'm changing my words. Now, for a few comments before the update. Not the idiot, and you need to tell these people to shove it. You also need to have a proper talk with your son about consequences. And I mean, talk to him like he's not a kid. Explain to him that because he keeps hurting other children, you can't trust him to go to a place with a lot of other children. Tell him that as long as his behavior is like this, you're going to have to keep on doing this. Comment 2. Not the idiot as long as you changed your mind because you have legitimate safety concerns, as it seems you do from the comments here. But I think it's important that you communicate to your kid and the therapist and the grandparents that that's the reason you're changing your mind. It's not that you just felt like the original punishment wasn't harsh enough. Comment 3. Your therapist is a scammer. No wonder your child hasn't improved. Get someone who is actually capable of handling your son's issues and not someone who used to be your wife's BFF. Now, for the update. Yesterday, after getting advice here and from others, I tried to find a therapist who specializes in my son's age. Luckily, I managed to have a talk with a therapist this morning. He usually doesn't work on Friday afternoons, but he made an exception for my son to go and talk with him. They had some one-on-one time for about an hour and a half. Afterward, the three of us had a conversation. Me, my son, and the therapist. My boy said he regretted hitting the other kid and wanted to show his remorse by going to the boy's house to apologize and giving him the basketball as a gift. In return, we agreed that my son could go to the camp. Now, we'll see how things go with this new therapist. The therapist told me I seem pretty stressed, and he suggested it's good for me to take some time to rest while my son is at the camp. He also assured me that my son is a good kid and that we'll work things out. He didn't give me any more details about their conversation. He seems more professional than the other therapist because he will not share so much information about what my son tells him. I drove my son over to the boy's place, and he apologized to the boy, gave him the basketball as a gift, and even said sorry to the boy's mom who was there. I gotta admit, I was kinda surprised by how polite my kid was. I guess in the end, I was being a real jerk. Comment 1. The problem with being a parent is no one is good at it. I would try to remove the word punishment from your vocab and focus on rewarding good behavior while removing privileges if punishment is really required. Also, look up operant conditioning. It's proven to be a much more effective behavioral training strategy than the classical punishment and reward system. In operant conditioning, most of the time you ignore undesirable behavior unless it's especially bad. Just food for thought, not advice. Comment 2. Good job, kid, and good job, new therapist. Hopefully your therapist can help teach him how to prevent these types of behaviors from happening, like learning to calm down the nervous system to regain control. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.